If you die before retirement age, your Social Security does not automatically vanish, but it also does not work the way most families think it does. And if the people you love do not understand the rules ahead of time, the money connected to your work record can be delayed, reduced, or in some cases missed completely. Before we go any further, if you care about protecting your retirement, your benefits, and your family's financial future, subscribe right now to Edrall Benefit Guide, because what you are about to hear could save someone in your home from making a very painful mistake later. I'm Norix Hale, and today we are talking about one of the most misunderstood Social Security rules in America. Most people believe Social Security works like a bank account with their name on it. They think if they worked for years, paid taxes for years, and then died before claiming retirement, that money just sits there waiting for the family to collect it. That is the first shock. That is not how Social Security works. Social Security is not a personal savings vault. It is a government insurance program. That means the benefits tied to your record do not simply get handed out to anyone you name, and they do not automatically become part of your estate the way a checking account, house, or retirement fund might. And this is where families get blindsided. If you die before retirement age, the real question is not whether money exists on your record. The real question is who, if anyone, qualifies to receive benefits based on your work history. That single detail changes everything. So let's slow this down and make it simple. If you die before you ever start your own retirement checks, your own retirement benefit stops being about you. From that point on, Social Security looks at the people connected to you and asks a new question. Is there a surviving spouse, child, former spouse, or dependent parent who qualifies under the law? If the answer is yes, then your work record may still protect your family. If the answer is no, then this is the part nobody likes to hear. In many cases, there may be little or no ongoing monthly Social Security payment for anyone, even after all those years you spent paying in. That is why this topic is so serious, especially for people over 60, people near retirement, and families counting on future income. Because one false assumption can lead to panic later. A spouse may think the monthly money is guaranteed. An adult child may think the family can just call and claim it. And then the truth shows up at the worst possible time. Now here is the part that should give you some relief. Dying before retirement age does not automatically mean your family gets nothing. In fact, for many households, survivor benefits can be one of the most important financial protections Social Security provides. But the rules are strict, and timing matters. Let's start with the surviving spouse, because for many viewers, this is the most important piece. If you die before retirement age and you were married, your husband or wife may be able to receive survivor benefits based on your earnings record. And sometimes those benefits can be substantial. A surviving spouse can often claim reduced survivor benefits as early as age 60. If that spouse has a disability, survivor benefits may begin as early as age 50. And if that spouse is caring for your child who is under 16, or a child who became disabled young, benefits may be available even earlier. That sounds reassuring, but here comes the suspenseful part almost no one explains clearly. Just because a spouse can claim early does not mean claiming early is always best. If they claim too soon, the monthly amount can be reduced, and that reduction can follow them for a very long time. So the moment a death happens, the family is not just dealing with grief. They are suddenly facing a high-stakes claiming decision. Take survivor benefits early for immediate help, or wait longer for a bigger check later. That is not a small choice. That decision can affect monthly income for years. And here is another twist many people miss. A surviving spouse's full retirement age for survivor benefits is not always the same as the full retirement age people talk about for their own retirement benefit. That difference confuses families all the time, and confusion leads to rushed decisions. If the surviving spouse waits until full survivor retirement age, the benefit can rise to as much as the full amount connected to the deceased worker's record. But if the claim starts earlier, the payment is reduced. What that means for you is simple. Timing is not just emotional. Timing is financial. Now let's talk about children, Because this is where the story becomes even more important for younger families and grandparents raising grandchildren. If you die before retirement age, your unmarried children may qualify for survivor benefits too. Usually that includes children under 18 and in some cases up to 19 if still in school full-time. And there is another rule that matters deeply to families facing long-term care challenges. A child who developed a qualifying disability at a young age may also be eligible for benefits on the deceased parent's record. That can be life-changing support, especially when a family already feels financially exposed. In many situations, a qualifying child can receive a monthly benefit worth a significant share of the deceased worker's basic amount. That can mean groceries, rent, medicine, school needs, transportation, and breathing room in a moment when the household feels like it is sinking. But now comes another surprise. Social Security does not always pay every eligible family member the full separate amount you may expect. There is something called the family maximum. In plain English, that means there is a cap on how much the entire family can receive from one worker's record in a month. So even if several survivors qualify, payments may be adjusted so the total stays under the maximum allowed. That is why one family may hear numbers that sound high at first, then discover the actual monthly checks are lower because multiple people are drawing from the same record. This is also why people should never build their whole future around a guess or around something they heard from a friend. Survivor benefits are real, but the exact amount depends on earnings history, age, relationship, and how many people are eligible at the same time. Now let's go to one of the most painful truths in this entire discussion. If you die before retirement age and you are single, with no qualifying children, no qualifying former spouse, and no dependent parent who meets the rules, your Social Security taxes do not just get sent back to your family. That is the sentence many Americans never hear until it is too late. They worked, they paid in, they assumed that money was sitting there waiting. But Social Security is designed around eligibility categories, not personal inheritance. If no eligible survivor exists, there may be no monthly survivor check to collect. That is why this conversation is not just about death. It is about planning. It is about knowing whether your spouse would qualify, whether your marriage length matters, whether your children meet the age rules, whether a former spouse may still have rights, and whether your family even knows what steps to take. And yes, a former spouse can matter here too. If you were divorced, that does not always erase survivor rights. In some cases, an ex-spouse may still qualify for survivor benefits if the marriage lasted long enough and other legal conditions are met. That shocks a lot of families, especially second families who never saw it coming. Think about how much confusion this creates in real life. A current spouse may assume they understand everything. Then an ex-spouse from a marriage many years ago turns out to have a valid claim based on the same worker's record. That does not mean the sky is falling, but it does mean assumptions can be dangerous. Now here is a question many viewers quietly ask but rarely say out loud. What if the person who dies was still working and had not worked for a full 10 years yet? Does that mean the family gets nothing? Not always. And this is one of the most important protections buried inside the rules. Social Security has special rules for younger workers. In some cases, fewer work years are needed for survivor protection. And under one special rule, if a worker had only about a year and a half of work in the 3 years before death, benefits may still be payable to children and to a spouse caring for those children. Read that again in your mind, because it matters. Even if someone dies relatively young and had not built the long work history people usually think about, Social Security may still provide family protection. That is one reason why checking the record matters more than guessing. Now let's talk about the one payment people always hear about and almost always misunderstand. The famous one-time Social Security death payment. Some people imagine this is a meaningful amount that helps families regroup after a loss. The reality is far less comforting. That lump sum death payment is generally just $255. Yes, $255. In today's world, that may not even cover a small portion of immediate funeral or household costs. So if anyone in your family thinks this payment will carry the burden, they need the truth right now. And even that small payment is not simply handed out without rules. Usually it goes to a qualifying spouse. If there is no qualifying spouse, then in certain situations a qualifying child may be eligible. And there is another catch that people miss. There is a deadline to apply. That means a grieving family that delays too long, assumes it will happen automatically, or gets lost in paperwork, can miss even that modest payment. Imagine dealing with a death, bills, confusion, and then finding out you missed a benefit because nobody explained the timeline clearly enough. This is why I always tell people not to wait until a crisis to learn the rules. Because the worst time to understand survivor benefits is after the phone starts ringing, after the account payments are due, after the funeral costs arrive, and after somebody in the family says, "I thought Social Security would take care of this." There is another layer of suspense here, and it involves the spouse's strategy after the death. In some cases, a surviving spouse may have a choice between their own retirement benefit and a survivor benefit. And that choice is not always permanent in the way people think. Sometimes the smartest move is to start one benefit first and switch later. For example, a person may begin with a survivor benefit and later switch to their own retirement benefit if it becomes larger. Or they may do the reverse, depending on age and earnings history. That flexibility can be powerful. But here is the danger. The strategy only helps if the person knows it exists. Too many families claim the first benefit they hear about without understanding the long-term difference. They focus on the next month instead of the next 10 years. That is completely human, but it can also be expensive. Now let's make this personal. If you are married and you are watching this today, ask yourself one hard question. If you died before retirement age, would your spouse know exactly what to do within the first week? Would they know who to call, what papers to gather, what not to assume, and what benefits to ask about? If the honest answer is no, then this video is already serving its purpose. Because knowledge before a crisis is protection, silence before a crisis is risk, and too many families are only one emergency away from discovering how unprepared they really are. Another major mistake happens when people believe Social Security will somehow notify everyone and set everything up automatically. That is not how life usually works. In many cases, the funeral home reports the death, but that does not mean every survivor benefit claim is magically processed from start to finish. A family may still need to contact Social Security, provide documents, ask questions, and formally apply for the right benefits. That means names, dates, Social Security numbers, marriage records, birth certificates, and sometimes divorce records can all become critically important. And here is the painful reality. When people are grieving, they are not thinking like accountants. They are exhausted. They are emotional. They are vulnerable. That is exactly why these simple administrative steps become overwhelming. A missed paper can mean delay. A missed question can mean a missed opportunity. This is also why your Social Security account and work record matter before anything happens. If your earnings history is wrong and no one catches it, that error could affect the survivor benefit your family later depends on. So checking your record while you are alive is not paranoia. It is protection. Let me say something very clearly for every older viewer who has children, grandchildren, or a spouse depending on future income. You do not have to be rich for these rules to matter. In fact, families living on tight margins are the ones who can be hit hardest by misunderstanding survivor benefits. If a household is already stretching every dollar, the loss of one income can create instant instability. Mortgage payments do not pause because someone passed away. Utility bills do not stop. Prescription costs do not disappear. And a confused family can burn through savings while waiting to understand what they qualify for. That is why this issue carries so much emotional weight. We are not just talking about paperwork. We are talking about whether a widow feels secure in her home. We are talking about whether a grandfather raising a child can keep food in the kitchen. We are talking about whether your years of work still protect the people you leave behind. Now let's tackle another myth. Some people think if a spouse remarries, all possible survivor benefits vanish forever. That is not always true. The timing of remarriage can matter. The age at remarriage can matter. Disability status can matter. And once again, broad assumptions can cost people real money. This is why internet rumors and quick comments from strangers are dangerous. One sentence from the wrong person can convince a widow she is not eligible, when in fact she may have a valid claim. Or it can convince a family that a benefit is larger than it really is, leading them to budget around money that never arrives. Now, if you are sitting there thinking, "This is more complicated than I realized," you are exactly right. And that is the reason people stay with videos like this until the very end. Because the deeper you go, the more you realize one missing detail can completely change the outcome. Here is another angle people forget. If you die before retirement age, your family is not only dealing with whether they qualify, they may also be dealing with when to claim, how work income affects survivor checks, whether children qualify, whether a former spouse is in the picture, and whether there is a better switching strategy later. That is a lot to carry in the middle of loss, which is why the smartest households do not leave these conversations for someday. They sit down before the emergency. They talk through the names, the records, the likely benefit paths, and the phone numbers that matter. And let me create a little more urgency here, because this is where many viewers will suddenly realize why they needed this video. The biggest mistake is not dying before retirement age. No one can control that. The biggest mistake is leaving the people you love with zero map, zero paperwork, and zero understanding. You can prevent that. You can leave clarity. You can leave instructions. You can leave a spouse who knows what survivor benefits are. You can leave children who know where documents are kept. You can leave a family that does not have to guess while grieving. That may be one of the most loving financial acts you ever perform. So what exactly should you do next if this topic applies to you? First, stop assuming your family already knows. They probably do not. Most people do not. Most families have never sat around a table and calmly discussed what happens to Social Security if someone dies before claiming retirement. Next, review your work history and your Social Security record while you still can. Make sure your earnings are accurate, because if the record is wrong, the survivor estimate tied to that record can be wrong too. Fixing that ahead of time is easier than leaving someone else to fight that battle later. Then talk to your spouse directly. Not vaguely. Directly. Tell them where key documents are. Tell them the names of former spouses if that history could matter. Tell them about children's records. Tell them what accounts exist. Tell them who to call. And most importantly, tell them not to assume that benefits happen automatically. If you have dependent children, or if you are helping raise a child with a disability, this conversation becomes even more urgent, because the difference between knowing and not knowing may affect a child's monthly support after a tragedy. That is not a small detail. That is survival-level information. If you are divorced, do not ignore this topic because it feels awkward. Awkward is temporary. Financial confusion after a death is far worse. If your former marriage was long enough, or if children are involved, those details may matter later. Silence now can create conflict later. If you are single and have no obvious survivor, this video still matters for you too. Why? Because now you understand that Social Security is not a pot of money your heirs automatically inherit. That truth should push you to think harder about life insurance, savings, estate planning, and other protections outside Social Security. That may be the most important revelation for some of you today. Social Security survivor protection is valuable, but it is not a complete plan. If you want to protect people who may not qualify under survivor rules, then you need other financial tools in place while you are still here to arrange them. And now let me give you the part that many viewers wait for. The simple answer to the title of this video. What happens to your Social Security if you die before retirement age? The answer is this. Your own retirement claim ends before it begins, but your work record may still provide survivor benefits to a qualifying spouse, child, former spouse, or dependent parent. If nobody qualifies, then there may be no ongoing monthly benefit for the family. If someone does qualify, the amount depends on your earnings history, their age, their relationship to you, and the claiming rules they follow. A small one-time death payment may also exist, but it is limited and comes with conditions. In other words, the outcome is not automatic, not equal for everyone, and not nearly as simple as most people believe. That is the suspense hidden inside this topic. Two families can lose someone at the same age, in the same month, and walk away with completely different Social Security outcomes depending on structure, timing, and knowledge. That is why I want you to hear this next line very carefully. The people who suffer most are often not the people who had the smallest work records. They are the people who had the least information. Lack of knowledge turns a difficult moment into a financial disaster faster than almost anything else. So do not let this be one of those videos you nod at and forget by tomorrow. Use it. Turn it into action. Open the conversation. Check the records. Talk to your spouse. Protect the people you love from confusion they should never have to carry alone. And if this video helped you understand something most people never hear explained clearly, make sure you subscribe to Edrall Benefit Guide right now. Because here we do not just talk about benefits, policies, and retirement headlines. We break them down so you can actually use them before they use you. I'm Norix Hale, and my message to you is simple. Do not wait for a funeral, a hospital call, or a letter in the mail to learn how survivor benefits work. Learn it now. Prepare now. And if you want, in the next video, we can break down exactly how much a surviving spouse can claim, when to claim it, and the mistakes that can quietly shrink a lifetime of benefits.